Welcome, everyone, to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host, and this is another Bad Batch report. Today, we are going to be covering Season 2, Episode 9 and 10, The Crossing and Retrieval. And joining me for this episode is my good friend, Michelle.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Get well soon, Molly.
Yeah. Molly, unfortunately, has lost her voice and thus couldn't record, although she really wanted to. So
I feel bad. I feel bad bopping into her spot, but I'll do my best, Molly. Hopefully I'll make you happy.
All right, let's get into these episodes, which I wasn't expecting them to be a two-parter, but they really are completely. Yeah. They could have been like one episode. It actually makes me question whether this show would be better released as consistently 2 episodes a week.
Yeah, this one for sure. Yeah. And then a couple of the other 2-parters, well, they did release at the same time. But yeah, this one, it seemed like, why didn't they? But maybe they just, who knows? Who knows the timing of things at Lucasfilm, what they're up to.
Maybe they give lots of 2-parter options for the middle of the season.
Oh, that could be true too. Yeah. Let's see. We could have this one or we could have that one. Which one would you like?
How compressed do you want this schedule to be?
Right. Exactly. How much overlapping with The Mandalorian are we going to do so we don't kill all of our podcasters?
Oh, they don't like us because we're also going to Celebration. And so that's
we are.
Also happening. Briefly, before we get into the first episode, I did want to talk about kind of some of the major things to pay attention to as we go through these episodes, because I think it's really important. Once again, we have another set of mind symbolism in Star Wars. So over 70 minds have appeared in Star Wars. It's probably somewhere upwards of 80 now. And we almost have
bananas.
Kind of 3 different pieces to the symbolism in these 2-part episodes. So the first is sort of a used up mind that only has the bits remaining, right? And deep in the mind is sort of some key knowledge,
right?
or something super valuable that you can only find when you're really, really deep in there. And of course, that ties to the Ipsum representing sort of thematically the elixir of the underworld that you find deep within the darkness. So we have sort of part 1, which is a traditional sort of cave metaphor that covers a catabasis journey and a reintegration of things that are broken. And that's entirely this first episode. The second episode, we have sort of mining as consumption, this sort of quick and easy path as a representation that also ends up using up the denizens of the mine, as well as consuming the aspects that are hidden within the mine itself. And this ties quite closely to sort of the lost mine motif in folklore. It really is quite tied to the American dream, that when you go and you try and find a lost treasure, it's more like getting rich through little work. But
right.
It's corrupted through capitalism and through slavery and ends up getting rich on the backs of others. And it always represents the dark side in Star Wars, this sort of consumption. And then we have a third version, which transforms the mine symbolism into a collective, which aligns with the mine symbolism that we get in Bespin.
Oh, Bespin. Yeah. I hadn't even thought about Bespin.
So it's
in a long time as a mine,
How do you turn something from sort of a dark-sided path into a more cooperative and compassionate version? This is so cool.
Yeah,
I'm loving it.
So cool. It is so cool. It is so cool. Bad Batch, you don't need to go this hard to make us this happy, but we're glad that you do.
When I watched this episode, I was like, these episodes, I literally was like, are they reading my notes? Like, am I in their brains?
I would check my house for hidden cameras at this point if I were you.
It's a little weird, but I mean, I am writing more and more on Star Wars symbolism, and I have an entire like chapter written on minds, and it covers all of these aspects. Isn't that fascinating that like even the idea that a mind could be a cooperative situation it already has existed in Star Wars in the form of Cloud City and Bespin.
Yeah, I'm dumb. I didn't make that connection at all. Like I was really, it was really cool that it transformed in that way, like you said, and that I was like, oh, this is so interesting. Like they're not going to disperse. He's not going to leave with them. They're going to stay and try to take care of themselves. And yeah, totally Bespin.
Yeah, it's neat.
Very cool. Yeah, it is.
We have the sort of key to the darkness, the glowing light within the darkness being Ibsen. What did you think of this?
Oh my God. This of the two, I really liked both of them. But episode 9, The Crossing, pushed all my buttons because it was, as you said, it's a metaphor for, you know, how it's explosive and you have to be very careful extracting it, but it's very valuable. And we see the, you know, like how the Bad Batch, they are getting on each other's last nerve at this point.
Yeah.
And especially all of them. And especially Omega is just like, what is wrong with you guys? Why are you not up? You know, they're just like they're picking on each other. Echo and Wrecker are just picking on each other. Hunter's like, this isn't helping, you know. So it's a perfect little metaphor for that. It's also a beautiful metaphor for you know, like you always comment that if you're going into a cave, you're going into your inner self. Yep. They're doing some inner work in this episode. And I was actually really, really fascinated that it's like when you first see the Ipsium in the rock, it's this beautiful glowing blue color. But the actual Ipsium inside is yellow, so it makes it look green. It's transforming colors as the story is going along, as Tech is kind of getting it more. Omega is understanding Tech more. Tech is understanding Omega more. This is a great episode. 10 out of 10, as far as I'm concerned.
So the only thing I'll say at this point is that, yes, Ipsum is the elixir. It is the Holy Grail, right? It is the thing that you go on your journey for in this episode, right? And when you find it, you are always given incredible power. And it's very dangerous until you can understand it.
Yeah. It's going to cause trouble until you can understand it.
Yeah. So it's really, really amazing that they did it so literally. Subtext is for the weak. You know, it's really great. And you know, I love it when symbolism has a textual component to it because it's easier for me to go, this is this. This is this, right?
We're not just crazy. It's actually, that's actually what they meant. And the fact that this stuff is called Ipsium, and Ipsum in Latin means self.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay.
Yep. You go into the self,
see what you're
to get the true self, right? To get the piece of yourself back. And that ties into why we go into caves. Why are there so many caves? They literally go into caves like 3 times in the course of these episodes.
They're in caves all the time.
And it's to experience a transformational event and to reintegrate and to experience a rebirth through the other side. Because as Clarissa Piccola Estes simplifies the journey that we go into when we need to transform, it's a life-death life cycle. So we go in, we die, right? And we are reborn into life.
And just in case we might have been too dense not to get that, they just literally put the water in the cave, just like to reiterate.
I know. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Like, some water in case you missed it.
In case, it's all there. It's all there. The symbolism is all there.
Yeah.
The other thing that I noticed was that we experience a micro version of transformation in episode 9, and then that helps them with the macro transformation in episode 10, which is so very Star Wars to say, first you're on an individualist journey, and then you need to bring the elixir back to the community.
To the people. Take it to the people.
You have to take it to the community. And who the community was sort of accidental because of the stealing of the home. Mm-hmm. But it was still important that they brought this concept of collectivism to the community.
Oh, yep. It's great. It's great.
What?
Yeah, I'm sorry if you're sleeping on this show. Anybody out there, you're just wrong. You're wrong. You're doing it wrong. You need to watch it.
I was freaking out. Yeah, I was freaking out the entire time I was watching these episodes. I feel weird. Like, no, you and I, yeah, like Molly gets it, you get it. I freak out. I'm like, I actually turned to my husband at one point and I said, I'm insane. He's like, you're fine. I'm like, yeah, but...
I'm glad you have people there to be like, no, you're not. Especially in this case where they're pretty much making sure you get it, you know.
There's sure
you're not insane.
All the road signs are up for, hey, Marie Claire, pay attention to this one. It's exactly what we talk about. Exactly. All right, let's get into the crossing.
Yay.
Which symbolically stands for a threshold. A liminal space that you enter to transform.
Yeah, because it's a weird title. Otherwise, like what are you talking? What crossing? The whole time I'm like, what are they? Unless you're thinking complete, like you just said, symbolically, I'm not really sure why they named it this.
There is sort of a theme of that is played up by the beautiful Kainai music. Being
yeah, we gotta talk about that. Yeah, that was crazy. I don't know if you're watching The Last of Us or not on HBO, but
I mean,
I turned on this show and I was like, wait, am I what? No, this is Bad Batch for sure. This is an animated Star Wars show, but it sounded so much like Last of Us music, which is definitely Western type music. But they did give us that poster last Celebration. The Bad Batch poster was very, very, Western style. Yeah. And I've kind of been waiting to see what exactly that was pointing to, I guess. So I mean, we were in Space, Utah, clearly.
Oh, absolutely. It reminded me.
Like
it reminded me so much of The Searchers, which was a huge inspiration for George Lucas. So I've been trying to suss out what are they trying to say by presenting it, and one of the shots, when they're about to be sort of run over by all the antelope or the the
Lion King.
The Lion King situation.
Yeah.
It totally reminded those caves of Utah reminded me of that episode of The Mandalorian when he has the child and he's trying to take the child back to the ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and he ends up
like that too.
Didn't it? I was that's so interesting because traditionally Westerns tie into the American monomyth where the lone stranger or the person that must commit murder comes from nowhere or comes from the community, rises up, commits violence, and then goes off into the sunset. But this is presented as the antithesis to that, both of these episodes. But it also ties into the I got the deed to a lost mine trope.
Right.
Right, which is the lost mine folklore. I have a lost mine. It's the key to getting me rich, right? That rich quick setup. But the entire first episode is not about that, even though that's the setup, right? That's what gets you. And that's quite common in that folklore. You find something in the darkness that you never knew you needed or you needed to resolve, right? So they end up going to try to find this volatile material that Sid wants the clones to get. They're kind of off balance without Echo. Hey?
Yeah. They're getting feisty with each other for sure. Because they're missing their, even though Omega is their emotional compass, I'm sure said this before. Tech or not tech, Echo is their like their moral compass.
Yeah.
So it's interesting though that he's not there, and this is a mind story, like you were saying. And it is Sid telling them to go mine this stuff for me, for capitalism purposes.
Quick and easy, right?
But again, what they learn and what they get from it is not, they don't get what they're there for. One more time, like this is happening constantly
over and
for
over.
them. They learn, it's inner growth. It's how to get along better. It's understanding each other better instead. So even though Echo's not there, they're finding like a new way to communicate with each other, which is really that's the goods, not the Ipsium in the end. So
yeah, exactly.
It works out.
Yep. And unbeknownst to them, there's a masked figure that has snuck up, right?
Yeah.
This is like the equivalent of like stealing their horses, which I love, like from a Western perspective.
Totally is.
And, they find that the mine itself has been depleted.
Want. At least the first one.
The first one.
Yeah, the one Sid actually sends them to.
Exactly. And they go deeper into the mine. They find a faint reading, but it's too difficult to reach. And so they invite Omega to come in. What did you think of this?
Well, I was, like, why are they leaving Wrecker and her outside when honestly they're the two that would be the most helpful inside the mine? but we had to get the story going a little bit and bring her in. But she was just kind of over it. She's really over them at this point. They don't understand her right now. And yeah, she's just, I liked her snarky attitude, to be honest. I like to see her not be so perfect all the time and so sweet and kind, because honestly, they deserved a little snark, in my opinion. They weren't really being very sensitive to her feeling. Hunter was, because he always is. But I guess Tech is the one that really needed to learn to communicate with her better. But you know what I mean? I enjoyed seeing her be a little, I'm over you guys for the moment.
Yeah. And like,
what did you think?
I absolutely loved that she was trying to like really see if she was on the same page as them, and Hunter and Wrecker maybe couldn't understand where she came from, but listened compassionately.
Yeah, they at least were like, I may not get it totally, but I respect that you're upset. Whereas Tech was like, literally, what's your damage, Heather?
Yeah, exactly.
he said so, like, what's your problem, or what's your issue? What's your issue? He said, what's your issue? And I literally said out loud, what's your damage, Heather?
It was so good. And I think
funny.
This is just absolutely important because they haven't been allowed to be sad about the loss of a brother ever.
That's true.
It's the contrast, right? And they're not allowed to express that emotion. And that ties very much to the theme of breaking out of the patriarchy that we see with the clones, right? That they're not allowed to be sad because they have been born and bred to be killed.
Right. Tech says later, I think even, this is what soldiers do.
Yeah.
And Omega's like, but we're not just soldiers. Like, hello.
Yeah.
First of all, she's not at all. She never was. That's not what she was made for. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, that's another reason I love this episode. Of all the emotional work everybody's doing on themselves. It's so great.
It's so great. And so Omega is able to retrieve the Ipsum, the self, the initial
makes me laugh.
And they contain it in this very large container to keep it safe, which is really interesting. And so they leave the mine and they realize that the Marauder has been stolen. And how did they not notice? How did Wrecker not notice? It's out of sight.
You parked it over there. Well, I can't see through rocks. Sorry.
I identify with Wrecker so much. I can't
love
see
him so much. These two episodes, he is he's so good in these 2 episodes. Just he is my animus, I guess, because he's just like hungry, hot, tired, over it, scared of heights, doesn't want to jump. Like, this is me 100% in every situation outside. So I loved it. I thought it was so funny.
And this is where like Hunter gets into a conflict with Wrecker. We've already had Tech in a conflict with Omega.
Right.
Tech also gets into Wrecker. So they're like all like bickering at each other already because one thing has gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
They start to...
Quick question. Did you, when they first showed who we later find out is Benny, I was like, is that like Hondo?
Oh, because of how he looked. Yeah.
I think they were teasing us. I think they wanted us to think it was either Hondo or maybe somebody that is on his team or something.
Yeah, like one of the Florum pirates, sort of.
I think they were nudging, winking at us, thinking, hey, you're going to think it's Hondo, and it's not.
I didn't think it was Hondo. I wish it was Hondo. I love Hondo so much. But it did look like his helmet. Or like
a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
So they start to like go back, and they're like, okay, we'll head towards this settlement. We'll walk 40 kilometers or something like that. Like, it's a long distance.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long distance. And this is very much like, even though they were in the underworld before, they had gone through a threshold. They're like on a road of trials, literally. This is like a little micro hero's journey. It's really interesting.
It is.
And they're faced with a herd of animals that, again, this Lion King moment that comes through sort of the crevices of this, I guess, former place where water used to flow.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Like they jump up basically to escape the animals and tell Wrecker to sacrifice his body basically to protect this Ipsum. I have no good things to say. It was hard. I was like, oh, poor Wrecker. He reminds me of like Louisa from...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
From Encanto. Like, I'm the strong one. But he's actually like really, really sensitive on the inside and doesn't like to be yelled at. Yeah.
Doesn't like heights. He needs to eat. It's hot. He doesn't like it.
And they end up being chased by the storm. So it's like if it's not animals, it's the storm.
Right.
And then
this storm is fascinating to me, by the way, because it
sort of chases them.
Yeah. First he's like, it's not coming our way. And then it literally
comes after
blows
them.
up their Ipsium and pushes them into this cave where they have all their like self-discoveries and communication.
I believe that this would classify as supernatural intervention.
Yeah.
It was very Deus Ex Machina, that they had no choice but to be in the underworld, in the darkness, in a period of transformation.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying not to clink my tea thing on the table.
That's okay.
Loud noises.
And so they're back into the cave and they're looking around, and Omega loses her crap on, like, just cannot handle being kind of disrespected by Tech. And, they've talked a lot of people have talked about online and how Tech is sort of autistic spectrum coded, and
very much just neurodivergence, in general, which I love. I love that character. I love him for that reason. He basically kind of confirms that in this episode.
Absolutely.
That's what he's, and like, that's what he's about.
Sometimes it's like, it's very hard to recognize that people who don't always react in the same way externally still have this, emotions and powerful emotions on the inside.
Mm-hmm. And it was really, really cool that they wrote that in, to have him have that explanation of, okay, I'm not a robot. I might be funny in my sometimes robotic way.
Yeah.
But I'm not a robot. I'm a human. And just because I don't react the same way you do does not mean that I'm not a human, basically. That was great. Oh my gosh, I loved it.
So good.
Especially since Omega is the one that is such the empath, and just really emotionally connects with everybody. And, it's a little difficult to connect with Tech, for anybody to connect with them. Like even Wrecker's having a problem, and they've been friends as long as they've been alive. So for him to come out and say that to her was such a huge moment in the show, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think it was really valuable as well to give them the space to explore it as a dynamic between Tech and Omega. Omega primarily being the eyes of the audience in the show. And I thought it was really well done. I thought all of the lead up where he seems so insensitive, and then it's explained later on from his perspective, and there's the space to give that time, was really, really important. They get trapped in, of course, because of the vial of Ipsum, and as Omega goes and explores the caves, she sees this like glowing light that sort of guides her path. And this is fundamentally the representation of seeking joy or following your bliss from a Joseph Campbellian perspective. You are guided by something that is almost like mysterious to you.
Yeah. That happens to her nearly in every episode.
Yeah.
Almost every episode. Omega just either just wanders off and finds the key to whatever they're looking for, or she senses something, or she hears something, or she glimpses something, and she's the one that follows it up and finds whatever. But I wrote down on my notes, literally, of course, the empathic magical child finds the magical cave of raw emotion deep inside that leads to their escape route, while the Batchers think moving all the heavy rocks is their way out.
Exactly. And this is the idea that children especially are more in tune with just following their joy and finding their path, right? Without society telling them that they have to do it a particular way. And it's also why George Lucas's opinion of Children of the Force is that children are naturally gifted in finding the Force.
And I was listening, I think it was your last episode with Molly, and you guys touched on
her being force sensitive,
Omega's possibly being force sensitive, and I just need to let you know I've been on that train since the first episode, when she had a third eye in the middle of her friggin' forehead for no good reason other than to just be like, I'm special, hey, look at me, I have a third eye, everybody.
Yeah.
which could also just mean a lot of other things. But until they look me and until Jennifer Corbett grabs me by the lapels and yells into my face, she's not force sensitive, Michelle, please let it go, I'm going to believe that she is, because I feel like that would be amazing. I'm not going to be mad if she's not. I'm not going to be mad, because it also can mean just she is special in these other ways that we talk about all the time. They're learning their emotions through her. This is true. But how cool, I know you already talked about this, but this is like my jam. How cool would it be if she is, and her twin brother, Boba Fett, was brought up to be such a like brought up by a bounty hunter to do like dark sidey things. But now he's learned as an adult the same kind of stuff she already has known her whole, like, oh come on, it's so tasty. Like,
I love in Book of Boba Fett how he literally goes into the Bacta tank, like the water of the womb, to heal and to like go through all of his path. Like that was so good. The first 3 episodes of Book of Boba Fett just absolutely slap. They're great. Yep.
I need to rewatch that show, actually. It was nothing but joy for me. So that is something I should rewatch. But I'm just saying, I will sing from the mountaintops if she is. But I feel like it's going on a bit long at this point for them not to maybe mention it. If that's the plan. I don't know. I mean, they've never really said how many seasons of the show we're getting, right?
No,
I don't think they've ever really said.
I don't think so.
So, maybe we're getting 8 seasons like the Clone Wars. Maybe there's plenty of time to reveal. I don't know. I got very excited when I heard you guys talking about that last time, because I'm like, yay. This is my agenda. My Omega's force sensitive agenda.
So we get Omega crawling through this tiny hole, able to find the hidden treasure that is the most powerful, right? It is extra special. Tech ends up, coming after her, and she's like, oh, you don't trust me. And he's like, I'm fully aware you are capable enough to handle yourself. This is such a big leap. This is a growth. They're all grown. They trusted her to do a whole bunch of stuff these 2 episodes on her own.
Yeah, this was super sketchy, dangerous. And they were like, be careful, be careful. She's like, I know, maybe you shouldn't bother me while I'm trying to extract a very explosive ingredient from this wall.
And, so he ends up letting her get more, right? Which is really great. And then she falls and slips as she's trying to get the last little bit. It's always the last little bit, right?
Right.
Last little bit. And he goes after her into the darkness.
Oh my God.
So good.
I was so he went after her. He did not hesitate. He just jumped right in. He had no idea what was going to happen. That's okay. It's my girl. I'm going after her.
And this is where falling into the darkness and falling into water is really significant because it is actually your lowest point and represents going back into the womb as a human psychologically to be reborn. The character itself is reborn. And they have this glorious conversation on the shore as they're waiting for Wrecker and Hunter to find them. And she's like, don't you care about these things? And Tech says, I'm aware that Echo left, but we have to adapt. It's what soldiers do. And to your point before, she says, but we're more than that. We're family. And this is where the show is being quite explicit with the idea that being a family, being interconnected, because it's not just them and it won't just be the Bad Batch. It's going to be all clones, right? We already see that by how Echo has acted, how Rex has acted. And, I love that he brings up but clones leave. Echo and Crosshair, they left us, right? How do you deal with that? Oh, you have to push it down. Even though he doesn't say that, you can't react. You still have to deal. And he comments how just because I process things differently doesn't mean I don't feel things. So there's a lot of things saying not just the neurodivergent connection, but it's also saying as clones, because we see this with Hunter and Wrecker too, they're not allowed to be sad that Echo left. They're not allowed to be sad that Crosshair left them. They're not allowed to be sad that they lose clones that they are right? You're not allowed to feel grief as a man. That's what the story is saying. And Omega is saying, you're wrong. You need to feel sad. It's right to feel sad, which is so oppositional from the prequels.
Right. Oh, totally. And just, it's obvious, from the story that, again, they were made specifically for war. She was not. And
she's their missing animal.
She's their missing. Yeah. She's the one thing that's going to Echo's already there because he had such an awful, horrific experience at the hands of the Empire. So he's already there and Rex is there. But I don't want to jump ahead to the next episode, but there's another little conversation at the end of that episode that just sort of reiterates that even though they're not making the same choice that Echo made, it doesn't mean they're not helping people. But anyway, back to this one. I forget what I was even saying.
Well, this is sort of the moral of the story, and more
right. Right. That she's the impetus for them to all come to this realization.
Yeah, and she very much represents the elixir of the clones, right? Because she was the first that was made, but the last that was found, which is so cool. Or the second that was made, because Alpha was first, but she was the last that was made. She's older than them, but the last true batched clone that was made.
Right.
Unique clone. Right. I just think it's great. And so they end up being birthed out of the cave through this tiny little hole, through an explosion, literally birthed out of the cave. And they find an abandoned town, which they are able to communicate with Sid. And Sid almost functions like a journey home threshold guardian. She's like, I can't do it right now. Too busy. Can't
help you. You've got more to do. Sorry. Bye.
And this ties to the idea that, hey, you just learned something in the microcosm of the underworld, of the catabasis, of being in that mind, of that refining and being reborn as, you know, essentially this was all for tech to say it's okay to express the fact that you are sad and to also allow yourself to feel that more fully and not just adapt and suppress. And
to recognize that even though he's saying, you know, just because I'm not wearing my emotions on my sleeve, don't assume that I don't feel anything. He's also understanding her in the same way, that just because she does express so much emotion doesn't mean that that's
doesn't make her capable.
Small. Yeah. Or make her incapable in some way. Or overly emotional. Like, you know. So it's
good. It's so good. And essentially it's saying like there's more to do even when you've healed, right? Even when tech has learned something, even when Omega's learned something about tech, they both learned things and they've come together as a group to be reborn again through the darkness. And they have like this power within them now. There's still more that you can do. And that's going to be like the ongoing theme of Bad Batch, which is always as the clones and the Bad Batch heal and free themselves, they also have to heal and free the community. They have to bring the elixir to the community.
In that vein, the way that this episode really, like the very last few seconds of this episode, the way it ends with the storm, like Hunter looking off into the distance and there's that storm again. And then it cuts to black and you still hear the storm sounds. That's, it's gotta, you need to take it to the people now.
Yeah, exactly. It's not enough.
The storms are coming.
I've been thinking a lot about there was a Buddhist monk who was talking about how we all suffer and how that's how we recognize the humanity in others and that we need to have compassion for others because we recognize we all suffer. And he said, sometimes the best you can do is heal yourself, is focus on yourself and reduce your own suffering and heal your wounds. And if you can, after you've done that, help others. Because by reducing your suffering, by healing your wounds, you will not cause wounds on others. You won't cause others to suffer, and you will be reducing the suffering around others. And if you can help others once you've done that, you're doing more.
Nice. Buddhism, thumbs up. Buddhism and Star Wars, one of my favorite. I love when they pull from Buddhism.
They tie together quite well.
And especially in this story because it's all about millions of identical people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So good.
Let's move on to Retrieval.
And meet Benny.
Episode 10. And
I ship it. I'm just saying it. I ship it.
Oh my God. Same.
I was like,
there's a
come
part.
On, flirt. Come on. You know you want to flirt. Flirt. Let's flirt.
There's a part in this episode when something happens and I'm like, oh, that's significant symbolically. So cool. We're on the same page, Michelle. Great.
Well, I mean, anytime there's cute shipping possibility, I'm gonna ship it. It's just the way I am. Colin is always like, ugh. I'm like, I'm sorry. I've been shipping things since I was 5 years old. I can't stop now.
It's like
just the way I am.
Shipping muscles are flexing.
That's
exactly.
True. Plus, like, she's what, 13-ish?
Yeah.
He's cute. Sorry.
He is cute.
Benny's a cutie. He reminded me so much of Ezra too. And like as Rebels first started with the hair, he's got the hair. Like even though he's starving and not drinking water, he's still got amazing hair. Look at that. He's cute. He's going to look even better now that he's, running his own mind.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it's a collective. Okay. But so Omega figures out, hey, I don't want to leave here without the Marauder. I know you guys have like moved on emotionally, but it's our home.
But Gonki also.
But right. Also Gonki, and we can probably track him. And they were like, oh, okay, that's probably not going to work. And she figures it out, which is so cool.
And Tech praises her for it, which was so cute. After they just had their little emotional communication revelation, he's like, hey, good job. That's a very good idea.
And we get introduced to Benny, and shout out to Rothgar Canuck, who pointed out that Benny is, I think, a pull from the West End Games Star Wars RPG from 1995. There's a character, like an NPC, that you can like throw into Platt's spaceport guide from there. And he's just a youngish man who putters around with his repulsor cart, constantly floating. He assails passengers trying to carry too much baggage and offers his services as a porter for a few credits. But he literally has like all of the streetwise pickpocketing perception skills of a thief, which is his like thing, right?
And the picture as well be this artist, this version of Benny too.
Yeah.
They look so similar.
They look so similar. So, I mean, if they pulled another character from West End Games, I'm so happy. It's like my favorite thing is to see when they actually pull from the RPG, because like that was one of the things that I played as a kid. And yeah, it's so good. So we get the setup of this mining town, basically, where there's the mines underneath, which is deeply symbolic, and sort of the town on top that is run by Mako, the boss of the town. And I was struck. Want to know why I was struck?
Why were you struck? I was struck too, but maybe not for the same reason.
So this town was managed by the Techno Union before they, the end of the war, and Mako took over. And Mako sounds like Echo. It's a near rhyme. And he has a robotic arm the same as Echo's.
Oh, yeah, I see where you're going. Cool.
Right? And I've been like, it's been bugging me all day. I'm like, why? Why do this? Why? And it's because anyone can be pulled into the darkness and be made to cause suffering to others. And if Echo hadn't been freed by the Bad Batch, he would have been a slave master for the Techno Union, like Mako.
Cool. Yeah.
Because he would have been trapped in there and causing pain to others.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Plus, the episode before was all about missing Echo. And we can't reach Echo. Like she even wanted to try to contact him to get help to get off the planet. And they're like, oh, he's not going to answer you. He's busy. He's busy on some secret mission. And that's kind of when she started to get really upset when they said that very nonchalantly. But yeah, that's definitely didn't think about that. That's cool. I have no idea if it was purposeful or it just happened to pull, but he's got a robotic arm the same as Echo's. What's happening? Do you want to hear what my
yeah, of course,
about him was?
Yeah.
So Mako literally means shark.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure in what language, and I looked it up, and it's Maori for shark.
Oh, interesting. Which is, like supposed to be like the, like where like Boba Fett and like that.
Right. Tem.
That's
Morrison
Tem
is Maori.
Yeah.
So it's like, in a parallel universe, all the clones are Maori, even though they're space Maori in the story, but they're really in the parallel universe. They would know that his name means shark and he's no good.
He's no good. No. I think they could have told that right away.
Probably. But I definitely did not make the Echo connection, which is very cool. I did, however, think like, oh, he's got like some sort of computer part on his back and the robot arm, and
he has a head implant, a back implant, and the arm,
which is definitely that's very Echo like. And the Techno Union connection too is cool. But more my thinking was way more on the surface of just like, okay, well, you have sacrificed your humanity, obviously, and you're literally enslaving children, so you're not good. And he, jumping way ahead, loses his life because his little robot arm just pops off at a bad time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. You've become a monster, and now you're just going to fall to your death into the hell pit that you've created. Sorry, you lose.
Exactly. And he sort of runs like the industrialized version of the sort of prospector's mind that we saw previously, which is now it turns into that mind symbolism that we're more familiar with in Star Wars, where people are being abused and used and pulled into the darkness in the pursuit of more and more greed and consumption and desire for control. And so we find out over the course of the episode that Mako runs the mine and starves and doesn't allow thirst to be quenched for the children that operate in the mine, right? And this is a big metaphor of how easily, kids get trapped into these sorts of situations. And also how, metaphorically, they're always hungry and thirsty for something that they can't quite grasp. This is a big symbol that is used throughout Star Wars. Like Kylo Ren in the Last Jedi novelization is always hungry. There's like a hunger.
Oh, yeah.
There's a hunger to the dark side because you're never satisfied, because it's consuming you as part of this. And so you don't have enough to feed yourself, you don't have enough water to quench your own thirst because it is consuming more than you have.
There's a lot of mention of rationing food in both. I think it's in the other episode too. They start talking about that in Wrecker saying how hungry he is, and that was definitely a theme of these two episodes, both of them.
And mythically,
how this was a thing.
It ties to that you really cannot eat in the underworld.
True.
Because you're dead.
True. Yeah. Like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I always think of that. How awful that is.
Yeah. Pirates of the Caribbean. You think of Persephone and how you're warned to not eat things in the underworld because you will have to stay.
Oh, well, I mean, if we needed to know how bad of a guy this guy is, like, starving children to enforcing them and lying to them to
get
trick
more
them
money
to get more money, and
it's a big metaphor for capitalism.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Like literally in the news, we just found out that meatpacking plants were employing like 10-year-olds against industry standards to do work.
And Benny happens to have a giant equal sign tattooed on his voice box, basically across his throat, which was super symbolic as well. Like, yeah, equality, and that's basically the symbol for the Human Rights Campaign.
Yep,
that equal sign. So that was cool. Yep.
You're right. They're
not being subtle.
No. Subtext. What's that? No, it's all in there. And Benny's confused that the clones showing up and that they would care about the gonk droid.
Right. Which he was going to strip for parts, just like Mako was stripping the Marauder for parts. So he's trying really hard to idolize this guy. He says his name probably 80 million times in this episode. Like, Mako this, Mako that. Like, he's his idol.
I'm going to be big, and I'm going to get to the top of that list.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to get my meager amount of food.
And it doesn't really take a lot, because obviously he's a good person deep down. And this is all the only reason he's acting like this is because he has to. He's an enslaved child. What are you going to do? And he even says, I can't leave. What are you talking about? But it doesn't take much from Omega to get him to be like, oh, yeah, I'm not that person. Not at all.
And in so many ways, it reminds us that we can't blame people that are in desperate situations, starving, thirsty, hungry, not being taken care of, for being bad and allowing themselves to exist under a system with no opportunity to change. Like we really can't blame people who are institutionalized into horrible situations.
Right.
That's
right,
hard.
Even the kid that you would think, I forget what his like
Draco.
little rival
Draco
is. It Draco?
That's his name, and
really?
he's got flames on his neck. It's
I
dope.
didn't realize
I
Draco.
died. I was like, yes, Draco.
Even in a story, you would typically root against him because he's the one keeping Benny down. But he believes Benny in the end, and he's like, hey, yeah. Because at first, when he asked him to see the little printout of the whatever evidence that Omega had found that Mako was lying, I thought he was gonna like grab it and throw it over the side, just because that's kind of how we're trained to be like, oh well, he's Benny's antagonist, so we don't want to like him. But it was great when he was like, no, I believe you, Benny. We're brothers. We're both in this horrible situation, trying to do our best. And so, I thought that was cool that he wasn't a jerk either. He was just trying to live.
There's a game mechanic in an RPG called Savage Worlds, which is it's called a Benny. It's literally called a Benny.
Oh, yeah.
And it allows you to basically say you've done something good. And so you kind of get a benefit, right? So,
okay. I think
that might be where his name is coming from a little bit as well. But the kindness that Omega offers him, the food that Omega offers him, the protection and like keeping him safe in amongst this. First, they're like they threaten him to help, but it's Omega that's like kind to him and shows him all of these things. And Benny's like, well, I can go and do the shield thing. And they're like, oh, and Omega's like, well, I guess you could bring this one because, she'll fit in.
Right. You can't bring Wrecker. That's not going to work.
No,
sorry.
You guys will stand out. You fix the ship. And we get a costume change for Omega, and I died. The gift of clothing is super significant.
Oh, okay. So I'm not crazy.
It's like a spiritual marriage.
And she drops her weapon for him too.
Yes.
First, she threatens him with her weapon and turns him all glowy pink with her pretty pink bow.
Yeah.
Then she's like, okay, I guess I gotta leave my weapon here if I'm gonna sneak off with you.
Yeah. The gift of clothing is really significant, and they start to go through their things, and she experiences his life, so she's able to in a way they're kind of like spiritually wed in this because she lives his life, like she goes into his life.
Right. And he sees what it's like for her too, with how kind her family is to her.
Exactly. It's like you've lived in each other's worlds, right?
And he does say, I owe you one if you ever need a thief. We're gonna see Benny again.
We're gonna see Benny again. There's no way we're not.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like he really wants to be part of this inner circle, which represents this like thing that seems so unattainable, and it all requires like the agreement from Mako that you've done enough. You've done enough, right? And the thing about the dark side and this consumptive nature of greed is that there is never enough. None of them could ever satisfy the greed that Mako had.
Right.
That's so hard.
Yeah. And even though Draco thinks he's like top dog, like what does he get for his trouble? He gets his own
bowl of
gross brown bowl to drink. Like, good for you.
And we get the comparison, like the audience gets the comparison of how well Mako is eating and how fat Mako is from always eating all the food and all of that, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very on the nose. I wish they hadn't made him anyways.
You wish they hadn't made Mako so on the nose?
Yeah. But I mean, they tend to do that, right? It's just because they only have so much time to work with. They use tropes really hard, right? Right.
I mean, I allow it. I'll allow it just because the show is so good. And, sometimes kids don't quite pick up what they're putting down unless they make him as unattractive as possible. He's got devil ears, he's got scales on his face, he's got machine parts. But yeah, I see what you're saying. It gets to the point where it's like, not all evil people look like that,
Yeah.
Maybe every once in a while can we have a really attractive, beautiful evil person. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, it's also saying, so Mako.
Sorry, that not to say Dead Ramiro is not stunning, because she is, by the way. She's coming to Celebration. Did you see that announcement?
I did, yeah. Along with Warwick Davis and Annabelle Davis.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, we're not gonna know what to do with ourselves.
So Benny, up in the control room, Omega's working, and he kind of just bumps the button. He has a second thought of like, oh no, I better protect myself.
Right.
Call the boss. And Omega gives him food, gives him the ration, which is so significant. And then Mako shows up and starts to lead Omega out of there. And it all kind of comes to a head on this bridge.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but there were at least 4 references to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom in this episode.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh my gosh. It was just like, and I was watching this with my daughter who's, seen that movie. She's a casual Bad Batch fan. I wouldn't say she's addicted as me and Colin, but she kept looking up and going, why is this Temple of Doom? Like it was so not subtle that she was even like noticing how many Temple of Doom things were in this one.
This one, and then the other episode with the like giant kaiju. Yeah, that episode, lots of Indiana Jones references.
Tons.
I'm just wondering if it's because they knew Indiana Jones was going to be released this year.
It's like absolutely, probably
subtle in-universe advertising.
Company synergy. Let's go. Why not?
Boy, I mean, just homage to the movie that's coming out this year.
Right.
I like that. That's Star Warsy.
It's cute. It's cute.
It's not over the top. You could definitely be like, I didn't see those things. Yeah. And so it ends up like coming to the attention of Mako, or of Benny and Draco as well, that the Ipsum is actually of a higher quality than a lower quality, which is what Mako is using to say you have to mine more because it's of lesser quality. And so, okay, this is really key. So for Mako, it's lesser quality because he constantly needs more, because he's always greedy. But when it's used by the collective, it's of higher quality because together they can make more of less.
Nice.
It's like the stone soup metaphor.
Right. Yeah.
Together, we have more together, rather than one person hoarding it all and they feel like they constantly need more and more and more. So even though it's used as a lie in this, it's also used as that metaphor that together we have more as a group. It's incredibly anti-capitalistic and incredibly socialist, this episode.
Yeah, but basically it's so many similar themes to Andor in the prison Narkina 5 arc. Very
Solo,
similar.
The droid rebellion in Solo.
Right. So they keep saying they keep saying the same thing over and over and over.
And
maybe we'll hear it someday.
Essentially through
go ahead.
Sorry.
So no. I was gonna say equal time, no problem shipping Benny and Draco either. So
yeah, fair. Yeah, they're cute.
They're all cute little. I did notice it was all guys or male presenting. Teens to children to teens in that, and parallel to the clones, maybe sort of kind of rebellion. The clone rebellion that we probably are going to get someday soon, and foreshadowing of that, probably.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, was that out of left field?
No. It was great. No,
I didn't get your brain off track.
No, not at all. So essentially, Mako says 10 years in the mine should do it. And then sends Omega to hard labor in the mines. But instead, there's kind of like a big switcheroo where Omega is able to like escape with Hunter helping her with a grappling hook.
The biggest Hunter Stan moment.
Oh, yeah.
Of all time, if I dare say so. I'm not one of these hardcore Hunter stands, but there are lots of them. And I guarantee you that ridiculous dad moment and her trusting him enough to literally just fling herself off of a catwalk. Sure, death.
Catch me, Dad.
No, my dad's not going to let me fall into the fiery pits of hell. There's no way he's going to catch me with his grappling hook. Perfect.
And like,
so good.
Through sort of like just being shot at, Mako ends up falling, and Benny tries to help him, offers him a hand, and the robot hand basically fails him. And so it was striking to me because he's like just too trapped in the dark side to like leave, and so ends up falling into the molten chasm with his sentry droids. Like it wasn't even like he was trying to ask Benny to help him. He literally said, Benny's trying to help save his life, and all he does is threaten him to pull him over with him. He wasn't even trying to beg for his life or anything. I think he just assumed he was going to die, but you're going with me because you betrayed me, you little... Yeah, exactly. And
I mean, my gosh. Wow.
They're giving us very subtle complications that like he was like a result of the machine, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it literally took over for the Techno Union. Exactly.
Yeah. So like it's sad. And the fact that Benny couldn't save him is sad. It's deep. I don't know. This is a lot. There's a lot for this show.
It is. I mean, that's why we love it, because it's not your surface level. It's not a kid. It's not just for kids. Clearly, exactly. It's for Star Wars fans. If you happen to be a kid, great. If you happen to be us, even better, because there's so much food here.
It's so good. Yeah. And we have this wonderful resolution, which is the kids have started to like collectively run the mine together, and there's more for everybody. And Benny brings their stuff back.
Wrecker gets Lula back. Did you see him at the end?
I did.
He's looking at his Lula. Oh.
And he hugs Gonky.
Yeah.
So cute.
Family reunion. So good.
And they have all their stuff, and Omega offers him like, hey, do you want to come out? And, it's a big galaxy out there, but, he feels like together as their community, they can make it work. And that is the big like moral, right? That ties back to the elixir, that you need to care about others beyond yourself and beyond your collective unit too. Right? Beyond the family, beyond the Bad Batch, they have to care about others. And this is repeated so many times. And so when Omega leaves, she tells Tech that there are other threats beyond the Empire. There are people like Mako, right? So it's not just the Empire, it's also capitalism. Interesting.
Yeah. And so it kind of leads back to their conversation in the previous episode when Tech said, as well, Echo and Crosshair made their choices, and we might not understand or agree with their choices, but we have to respect their choices. So now in this episode,
it's like, do we?
They're well, I mean, Echoes, yes, we definitely have to respect his. But now it's like coming around full circle. Like I think I said this before, but just to reiterate that even though they have not chosen to go with Rex and Echo,
doesn't mean there aren't things.
Just because Echo felt specific compulsion to go with Rex and do work with him, that doesn't mean what we're doing is any less important. So I really liked that those two conversations kind of connect in that way, I guess, in my brain anyways.
Absolutely.
They put like a nice little cap on
these two episodes. These two episodes went together so well.
Yeah. Yup. I know. I feel like all I do is say how great this show is, but I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. It is great.
It's so good. I'm so happy we have it. I'm so happy that it exists. And that these episodes were so for me and you.
Big time.
Awesome. Michelle, where can people find you if they are looking for you online?
Mostly on Twitter. I have a personal handle at Frey Adjacent. And my son and I do a podcast called Unknown Regions Podcast. And we have a Twitter handle as well, which is at Unknown Reg Pod. And you can sporadically find episodes from us on all your normal podcast places. Right now, I feel like I say this every week of every month of constantly, but he's again working on a capstone project. This is his second. The first one is done. This is the second capstone project for the second degree, because if you can say nothing else about this kid, he goes big or he goes home. So he's got a very huge project. It is Star Wars related.
It's so cool.
I can't wait to share it with people when it is done. It's probably not going to be done for another month or so, but
it's so cool.
Before we even post it, I'll probably send you the link, Marie Claire, because he just had about 100 people collaborating to record a piece of music that he wrote for this project.
That's awesome.
And like I said, it is Star Wars related.
It is.
Y'all will see that in a couple, probably a month and a half, I would guess.
It's great.
But anyway, yeah. So that's where I am most of the time. Twitter.
And we're both going to be at Celebration, so that'll be a lot of fun too.
Yes. Hopefully our hotels are not too far apart. It was nice that we were at the same hotel last time. That was fun.
That was awesome. Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie Claire Gould, your host. Our music is provided by Christy Carew for What the Force. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We would like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force. Melody, In Wild Space, How Rude, Anna Perez, Neil, Christian Luca, Josh Johnson, Scott C., and Susan. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. Check out our other channel on YouTube, What the Fiction. You can connect with us on Twitter at WT Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, and our website, whattheforce.ca. We also have a Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.